Hey, beautiful souls. This is Alyson, my friend, and we've known each other for just over a year. And is it a year? About a year.
Just
And
about a year.
yeah, and we have been in regular communication, chatting about what's happening in our lives and sort of supporting each other, listening, being listening posts for each other, listening to what's been going on. And we have um, we sort of, in a funny way, solve the problems of the world in those couple of hours each week. And we always leave our conversation feeling really high and full of energy for the next upcoming week. So we thought we'd begin to record some of these conversations just to see if it could add to your life, to your perceptions and concepts, to see how we look at the world and what we understand. So good morning, good grand rising, Alyson. How are you going?
Good evening for me. It's about just after 5 here in Sarasota, Florida. But yeah, so we've had a full day already, but it's good, hot, summertime here. So it's always so interesting. I forget you're on the complete opposite. So it's like you're starting your day. I'm coming to the end. You're in winter. I'm in summer. So I think that sometimes has like a little metaphor to it in terms of just like, we often talk that we have this energy that kind of goes like the figure eight, and it just sort of feels like northern to southern, day to night. So I'm well.
Yeah, and that's almost like the polarity, the swing of the polarity that we're experiencing, because here it's freezing cold, it's misty and foggy, and the exact opposite, the other end of the spectrum for you.
Yes, exactly.
You and I have had quite an intense week, couple of weeks really, and as you know, I put out a couple of videos where I really, in a way, let it all hang out, and just wanting to find that level of authenticity. And it was described to me that as we begin to awaken and evolve, all of our thoughts will be written across the sky, and that we better get okay with those all aspects of our thought processes and what we're going through, because it will be seen and readable more and more and more. So we better start finding the strength or the bravery to be authentic, to be truthfully who we are. And in my readings and contemplations, part of the biggest thing that we've been doing on this planet is living with a facade, living with an image that we want to project, that is whatever we want it. It could be that we're successful, or that we're achieving things, that we are beautiful, that we are acceptable. And as we evolve, we're going to have to take off all of that facade, because everything that we are will be readable and written on the sky. So this week, it was tough for me, but you have been doing it for 9 years. You've been just who you are on your YouTube channel. So I wanted to know, I'd love to for you to talk about how that has progressed for you.
Well, first, I just want to say, like, it was so, in the time that we've known each other, it's just been so magical, because we really have, as we say, we've really witnessed one another have some highs, have some lows. And I just don't think there's anything more beautiful than that, when you can hold space for somebody when they're in a low spot, and not like hold it against them, or forget that at the same time they might be in the low spot, the very next day they can be that enlightened master that we all have within us. And I was so excited when you released the videos, and I knew you were nervous, and you even left me a couple Telegram messages. I don't know, and you have some self-doubt, but I was like, who are you talking to? Like, who are you asking? Of course, I'm gonna be the biggest cheerleader for that. And yes, I've been doing it on my YouTube channel for almost 10 years now, but I've kind of always been that way. I mean, I'm just wired. I always have kind of worn my emotions on my sleeve, which then makes it that I've often revealed vulnerabilities. And, I just don't really know how else to be. But on my YouTube channel, which essentially is just the sharing of my spiritual awakening story. I'm coming up on 12 years since what I would call my official awakening, which is less than half of the time that you've been on your conscious journey. And I just felt, it was like almost instantly, I knew it had to be authentic. And early on, I definitely revealed some videos and shared some personal things that, I'm not going to lie, when I watch some of my earlier stuff, which I don't do very often, it can be embarrassing, because you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I shared that. And it's not even that I'm afraid or ashamed or embarrassed of anything that I'm sharing. It's more about what you open yourself up to energetically, especially for people who may not be on the journey, and they're just not at the same sort of frequency, and they just really don't understand from multiple levels what you're trying to share. And it took me, I have very much grown into my sharing and matured into it, but I don't hold back. I have a potty mouth, so I curse words have energy, and I have a lot of energy. So I try not to, I'm careful or cautious. I don't like throw them around, but if I let a curse word slip, or if I want to use a curse word in a moment because that's the word that has the most emphasis, I don't sit there and get wrapped up in my head, or people going to think I'm not spiritual because I just used a curse word. You can drive yourself mad. You will drive yourself mad. I did almost drive myself mad in the earlier years, trying to imagine how all the people in my life who I thought might be watching would receive something, or how would they take what I'm saying? And I just began, I would say within the first year or two, just training myself. It doesn't matter if the camera's on or the camera's off. I am just me, and the universe is always listening. And so, because I have a lot of sessions and work things that I do when I talk to myself without a camera on, and I just kind of am like, the universe is listening. That's really all that matters. I'm usually talking to myself first and foremost, and anything else is just like, hey, if it resonates with somebody, take it. If it doesn't, leave it. But also be aware that the stuff that doesn't resonate, I'm really sensitive. So I definitely can feel the energy like directed at me when, even if somebody doesn't comment, or like, I'm just sensitive. I can feel it.
Yes.
And I have really I've been cognizant, do not be attached to the positive or the negative. Do not get wrapped up in views. Do not worry about thumbs up or thumbs down, and that has been and continues to be, it takes diligent, conscious effort to do that, to just put out, trust, and not be attached either way to how people are receiving it.
Yeah. And what sort of stood out in my head was the word mad, because people who don't understand this think you are crazy. People would say that to reveal a weakness is craziness, because it is it's leaving you open, as you say, to attack and judgment. But really, and we know this, that it's more about you. So if you're judging someone else, what they've said or how they present, it's really showing you. And that that it's and that's what I have said or thought when I see negative comments. When I first started doing some of the tarot readings on another channel, boy, were the comments really
I
heavily
remember.
judgmental. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
just thought, you know what, those people have some stuff to learn. And that's how I sort of let it go. And eventually they leave. The people left the channel and never listened again.
Yeah.
So it's about being okay with yourself and getting to the core and letting go of that all of those layers of the image that we try to project. And look, I'm incredibly guilty of I've always attempted to be cool, calm, and collected, and uh, it's sort of one of the ways I got through life was to look like I had it together, and at times when I didn't. And what I understand is that the next step is to let people see who you are, to let you be okay with all aspects of yourself. So I'm trying to sort of be more real in what I'm saying and doing. And so then hence this, because normally when I get on to do a video, I've got an intent and I want to do some light language and I want to give a message. But this is just chatting, and this is just sharing who I am with you and anybody else that might be interested, to show that we're all going through our stuff. We're all going through these highs and lows, as you say.
Yeah, and I have felt, you know, I was what I would consider pretty dialed in and awake from a very young age. Not to some degrees as some of the voices I've listened to and some of the YouTubers over the past couple of years, but I was just and very innocently, like I just knew there was something greater and life. I was really dialed into it. But then my immediate home situation really kind of shut that out in my early teens, like 13, 14. And then that would start a very dark 2 decades where there was some light, but it was more dark and way more dark than light. But I have always felt that, especially once I graduated from college and very quickly realized I am not intended to fit into this mainstream world. But my background was very mainstream. And so my whole life had been mainstream. And then when I had my awakening at 34 years old, almost 34 years old, it was like instantly, I was like, I knew it. I knew that world and that version of reality that I always saw and was very connected to was real. And so instantly, it was like, it was almost like an overnight change in some way. And so then 2 years later, when I would start my YouTube channel, I just felt like the authenticity part, again, it was natural. I didn't even think about it, but it gives others permission, gives people permission to feel different. It gives people permission that if they're not resonating with this paradigm or with various aspects, it's okay. You're not alone. And then right with that is being authentic about the journey and being real about the ups and downs and the times where I feel like anything is possible and I'm on top of the world, and the times where you just feel like, holy crap, like I feel like a completely different version of myself right now, and again, being careful and cautious just because of energy, when to reveal that, right? Like these days, I do my best. There are times where I'll capture raw emotion in the moment because there's something about it when it's raw. Or if something happens that we can't control, that's a beautiful thing, but if I'm dealing with something or have overcome something that I'm more aware of, I try to get myself a little beyond it so that I'm not quite feeding the trough, but wait till I'm more coming on the up end, or even better, when I'm through it, and then talk about it, because I think there's so much value in that. And that's what I feel like you and I have done so many times in this past year.
Mm. Yeah, just having someone listen that will allow you to let it all hang out, let it all, to be honest and vulnerable. And when I think of this, the video that I did yesterday, where I talk about being triggered these two major times, I'm not putting the videos up for sympathy, which is interesting. I mean, I'm not, and because that's not what I'm asking for, because I don't feel victimized by any of this stuff. It's what I had said in the video before, that this is all an experience. And I wasn't sure if the light language wanted to come through. So yes, so it's not to say that to get poor me, energy and people supporting me, making me feel better. It's really just sharing that this is the process. This is the mechanism. This is the trajectory that I'm on, and that I wanted to sort of let people know that they're not alone if they're in that same trajectory. That, yeah, there are times when I feel it's too much. There are times when I feel that this journey, this experience is too much. But again, as I've said, it's sort of, I think that that too much comes from the little child's, the inner child's perspective of trying to deal with those emotions. And as I've said, ride that wave, ride it with the observer. And eventually, and like, I feel stronger after it. I think I feel more grounded afterwards. I feel a different person after I go through that. And in fact, the level of self-love grows within me when I'm really with those emotions, with that process of being triggered, and when I get the understanding and put the pieces of the puzzle together about what it is, where it comes from, the love and the appreciation of self is huge, increases. But let me say before we continue, that when I say that it comes from the little child, that the emotions that I'm really feeling there, it is, yes, from your inner child, but I believe that any time or place that you're dealing with that issue that you are triggered by, you are attempting to process in that moment. So if there are past lives that haven't been resolved around that sort of that issue, the core of that triggered issue, that comes into play in there as well. So it isn't just here and now, it can be other realities, in other dimensions, on other planes of existence, other planets, and that core triggering is connecting into all times where I'm trying to heal it. And that's the reclaiming of self. That's the pulling back parts of the split off soul, the soul shards that are all around creation, that are trying to resolve all of this core issue. And that's why it's, again, can seem so overwhelming. But yes, so ultimately when I come through, I feel stronger, a greater love of self, and more and ready and raring to go into the next phase of my life.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so much there that we could unpack and go towards. Let me see. Let me start. So one of the greatest, again, it's so challenging to speak of these times and what we're going through collectively and individually, because it's so vast, and like you just pointed out, it is multidimensional. It is so far beyond just this life, and there's so many aspects, and it continues to be revealed. So you're never going to have it all figured out or all the answers. But I would say if there are, sometimes you can identify some high level truths or high level themes. And I would say, or I would argue, although I don't want to argue with anybody, that one of the high level realities of being on this journey and doing the work that's necessary for our individual soul to evolve and thus the collective to evolve is to break away from victimhood. So, I mean, that is so big. And so like we chatted yesterday, you and I, a little bit about, you know, there was a couple of comments on one of your video where it's like the sense is that people, again, are kind of like, you know, you, and I would interpret it the same, like people are offering sympathy and you're like, I don't need sympathy. I don't need help on this. I'm just sharing, you know, sharing from the reality or the realness and the depth of the experience of what that is. And anybody that I would say, you know, and it's so tricky because I don't want to insinuate hierarchies or levels or anything. Everybody is exactly where they're meant to be, and we're all in different spots. But there are like sort of some points of no return, like, and there's some big things. It is not about being a victim. Now, that does not mean that many of us weren't actually victims in some way, especially in our youth, you know, because we know, at least you and I, that's all we can speak to, not knowing who may be watching, our souls chose our families and chose our circumstances with tremendous intent for the overall growth of our soul in this lifetime. And as such, many people that I would say who are awake now to various degrees, it's a common thing, I think, that many of us have had some really, really challenging aspects of our childhood. And I got to tell you, Jo, you know, a lot of times, in fact, one of the reasons I think I'm still blocking myself, you want to talk about authenticity, is there is an aspect that I am still haven't quite navigated in terms of sharing what I feel is one of the most powerful and most important aspects of my overall story, which is working like hell to break the pain of my childhood and what was involved in that, where there was some serious victimhood of some things, emotional abuse, and then taking that into my adulthood, not having any idea the foundation and how and when and where it was set. And those are such huge things to share for others who are also trying to break from that victimhood. But how do you do that without making my family sound like jerks? And you know, like I chose it, you know, but I have had people watch, because I remember I started sharing that very early on. And the thing is I was sharing it from, I kid you not, one of the happiest, highest vibing places I have been in yet to this life was, you know, that bliss period right when you awakened. And mine lasted for like 2.5 years, right? Where you're just like, woo-hoo! You know, you're just in bliss. And the family members at that time that were watching, now very, very, very few of my old network watch anything I do. My whole old network is almost gone, but I could tell by what they would say, you know, they had no understanding of what I was doing by trying to talk about that. They ended up taking it like it was just, it opened up a whole bag of worms for me energetically. And I swear to you, I've been pretty stunted in that aspect of my sharing. And it's like this lump in my throat, because for years I'm like, this is possibly the most important thing to be sharing, because it comes up still and I daily have to work. I mean, that's one of the things that you and I talked about my tough week, was that I got triggered hugely again into that childhood wound. And it's just really, I don't want to say risky, but I dance that line. The authentic thing is to remember what my intent is when I'm sharing. And if somebody else happens to watch it and get triggered or plug in things that are not true, I'm not trying to attack my family. I'm not trying to attack anybody. I'm not trying to blame. I've simply just been trying to understand myself in a way to be the best version of me and to be that wholly integrated me. So yeah, that victimhood one and the sympathy, I mean, that's all sort of wrapped together. And the other thing that sorry to go on a little bit, but this will be the last one, then I'll toss it back to you.
No, you're good, you're good.
The other thing that I love with you and I, because you can't recognize some of the wounds. How do I say this? You can tell when another person has also had a wounded childhood. And you can also tell when somebody is really stuck in that victimhood, but when somebody is trying like hell to break it, who's aware of it and doing the work. And I have found it to be very rare, one, to find somebody else that knows exactly that very specific pain of being the oddball in your family and not feeling loved or accepted or understood or seen or any other list of things. And then how it rears itself your whole life, and you're not trying to be a victim, but it keeps coming up because you got to keep peeling it and coming at it. And then I have found it hard. So one, somebody that understands that, and you can tell, you feel it, but two, somebody that's not trying to stay in it. Because you know as well as I do, we live in a society that sort of creates victims and makes it all about somebody on the outside or something outside of us is the problem. We still don't understand that it's our outside reality is entirely a projection of what we're feeling and what we are inside. And so it's been a beautiful rarity with you specifically, because I have not found that. I have not found that to this degree, like I have with you. And because again, you don't attack me or like when I'm low, and then if I come back high, you don't have this energy of, yeah, but she's a mess, really. She's not really able here. Like, you understand that we have this enlightened power, all of us, this, wisdom within us, but then we're that wounded child or wounded from past life things at the same time.
Yeah. And, and we're actually happy people, you and I. Like, it's not like we're doing this deep work all the time. It's just when we're ready. This is what I really believe. When you're ready, it comes up to be dealt with. There's sort of it's like you think of a clock or a watch mechanism, and there's, the interacting thingies. And so I sort of think that on some level, there's a higher organization to this, even though, I mean, there's so many ways we can define what we're in at the moment, but there is on some level a organization to all of the things that come up in your life when they come up, because it's when you've reached a certain level of self-awareness, and then you can take the next sort of dive into this aspect. But essentially, I'm a happy person, and I have a great life. I have freedom. I have, it's not like this is a shadow that I sort of, drag around with me. And I want to sort of let people know that it isn't. When you decide to do this work, there is such freedom and joy that comes when you have that aha or that understanding, or you put the pieces together and you go, oh, that's why, and that's where it comes from. And I said yesterday that on that, talking about a year ago, when I spoke out of turn with that person, and I started to feel this huge level of terror for no reason. It was really out of proportion to what had actually happened. And when I realized that, put it together with what had happened as a kid and the threats that were made against me as a kid, there's such a high. I can't,
Yeah.
it's a very interesting thing. There's a high, there's an epiphany, oh my goodness, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then you just let it go and you
Yeah.
move on. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing that you learn to do, is that it is an aspect, it's a part of you, but it isn't you truly. Who we truly are is that divine being. And what we're doing is peeling off layer after layer of these issues and unfinished business and split off aspects. And that as we do that, we get closer to that divine, the core of that divine aspect. And that's thrilling. That is amazing, that feeling.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's a magnitude of and depth of beauty that is very challenging to describe with words alone, because it's the I almost the word that wanted to come out was like the simple complexity, but that it's kind of an oxymoron. But it's just sort of it's ultimately, I feel like it's integration. It's just it's integrating all of these. Bless you, bless you. It's integrating all of these darker aspects of either this life, or if we remember incidents from past lives, it's all part of existence. It's all to be seen and embraced and integrated. And you and I have spoken a lot about this. I think a
Embrace
big
all.
part, yeah, I think a big part, certainly, that the collective is missing, and the collective would get it if enough individuals were getting it in the
Yeah.
past 2 years, is we are still, again, we've been conditioned to put the blame outside, to look outside, and not go within and understand that, and not face head on these darker things, these darker memories, these not so perhaps fun or enjoyable aspects of life. But it doesn't mean it's still not beautiful, and we can't turn away from it's part of it. We
Mm.
have to be able, and I think that is what makes it so powerful, because when you start to integrate that and accept yourself more completely, you have a much easier time than extending that acceptance
Yeah.
outward, not
Yeah.
only to individuals, but to the world at large. And then you're not wasting, it all boils down to energy. And then you're not wasting energy being pissed off and angry at all of these things outside of you, because it's not really about that anyway. It's
Mm.
about here. Now, with
Yeah.
that said, I can tell you, on this 12 years, in terms of like the happiness and joy, boy, well, I mean, I am definitely tend to be naturally super incredibly positive and very joyful and happy. But man, the past 2 years, I don't know if that's true for everyone, but these 2 years have been the toughest of the 12
Mm.
to keep my eye on that happiness and joy. I don't know if it's because the depth of what's being brought to the surface. I don't know if it was because I haven't owned a TV in 14 years, so I didn't know anything about, like, I did not know. I really did. I knew enough after 9/11, being an American, after a couple of years of not being able to reconcile that and I went down the rabbit hole. Then I'm like, oh man, I knew nothing was as it seemed, and I
Mm.
knew there was some dark, dark agendas happening, but I didn't know it was worldwide. I didn't know any of these narratives. I
Mm.
didn't
Mm.
I didn't know any of it. Like, somebody had tried to tell me about like the sex trafficking for the first time like 6 years ago, and I'm like, I can't handle. I was focused fully on aligning my life to this
Mm.
world that I had always seen, and trying to get my life aligned to the light, to the love, to the thriving, to the paradigm that I believe in, which is not this one. So
Mm.
when this happened 2 years ago, 2+ years ago, I knew right away, this is definitely not what it seems. It's time I go back out and kind of get some information. And I
Yeah.
think that's why I've been having a little bit harder time with the joy and the happiness and the dancing and the singing and the juggling that I do, which has been almost absent, because it's just been so overwhelming to get all of that, and then to have whatever it is I'm learning about in the outside stories, what's that reflecting about me and bringing to the surface for me. And it's just like, and then as soon as I make it through one wild thing and try to find my balance, it's like, bam, then something else hits. And so it's been a very big challenge. And I can't really imagine, to be honest, what it must be. I mean, I know why people are keeping themselves not, asleep, because I had a general understanding of this, and it has knocked me on my caboose more than once, in terms of holy crap, this is unbelievable. It really is, because then once you see it, you can't unsee it. And like everything makes sense once you start seeing like the really big picture of sort of some of these narratives. Then everything kind of makes sense. But then you still have to come back to, okay, well, how do I find my peace, my balance, my grounding, especially when the world is like shutting down, and like my whole life changed because I was traveling for work for the previous year. So like my whole life, I had to adjust in a not so small way. And I was already not playing the regular game. It was already hard, but it was enjoyable because I could feel myself making progress. But then the whole world, so it's been, that happiness and joy has been a little bit tougher to find these past couple of years. But like you said, each time I climb back out and find it again, I'm stronger. I'm more resilient. I'm more integrated, and I'm ready. Bring it on, the next one.
Well, I think an important point about what you were saying was that we have to really make an effort to spend time, as we've said, here.
Yes.
And when we say here, we mean detached and in the heart center, we call it meditation, but in a place of peace and detachment from this external world. And as we dive deeper into the heart of who we are finding that 0 point. We're finding that divine aspect. And when we live in that frequency, that's the frequency from which we begin to create the world again.
Yes.
And so we're not talking about denying what's happening out there, but it's that you should spend, or recommend spending, as much time as you can detached from what's happening. When it comes up, you deal with it. If something happens in your neighborhood, if something happens to friends, if something happens with a friend on the other side of the world and they're going through stuff, you look at that, you feel it, you breathe it, you understand it. But when you can, you let it all go and understand on some level it is, is it the movie? Is it just a lesson? Is it a simulation? So the way out of here, that was the name of the video that I did, the second to last one. And how do we evolve out of here? So the first 9 points were dealing with all of this. What is going on in the frequency? What is in our frequency that is a match for what's going on in the world? Why are we seeing this? Why are we going through this? Because in some way, it's an energy match for what's inside of us. And as we feel that and process that and observe it, and the observer, how important is that? The understanding of all of this from that higher, maybe somewhat detached, interested perspective. So we go through all of that. But as we get a greater understanding of what's in here and why and what is being mirrored, then the last point of that preface of that ebook that I wrote was, we have to start spending more time from here. So yes, we're human. Yes, this is the reality. Yes, this is what we're here experiencing, but we're also evolving through this. And we haven't evolved through it on a grand scale for a long time. We've been stuck, and whether that's a trap or whether that's a hijack, we've been stuck. So once you begin to understand how this whole mechanism is working, then you start finding energies, you start anchoring, like throwing your anchor into the sky, throwing your anchor into that higher frequency. So that's where you are anchored. You're not anchored here in this, you're anchored up there. And when you're anchored, you still move around like the boat, you move around in life. But ultimately, where you are anchored is in something higher, something, and again, higher and lower. That's, something whole. Then you're anchoring into a place that is beyond the polarity, that it is all love, all allowance, all connection. Esiata kute esti zikongetse beata koyatsa akikenia.
Yeah. Oh no, I love anchoring in the sky. And I kind of feel like, again, other people might feel like it's a different energy, that like what I imagine is my imagination and my creativity is the way I envision and the way I act out that. Anchoring in the sky for me, I listen to this woman named Emily Moyer. I don't listen to many people, but I really like Emily a lot. And I love, because I resonate so much with how her mind works and things. And she says, she's like a storyteller. Now she's a little bit more focused on, she's a lot more focused on decoding what's been going on in the world. And she's been doing it for a long time, where I feel like I'm more of an encoder, where I've been really focused for 10 years trying to manifest that we're a world that I have seen that's up here. And Emily talks about, it's like telling a story and then the story backfills. And my life has evidence of that for me. Like I started everything in this house when I took my huge literal leap of faith almost 10 years ago. I was renting this home with no plans whatsoever to ever buy a home, for so many reasons. Least of all, I was in nowhere was that going to happen financially, but mostly because I hate participating in interest and giving the stupid bankers any more money than what I have to. But this is one of the greatest physical manifestations that has backfilled. When I took that first year and literally took that leap of faith to try to manifest not only a reality for me that was up here, but I needed playmates. I need to make it so that others can begin to see it and have courage and create for themselves up here, so we can begin to play together here. And remember, that's our choice. We don't have to keep playing this game. We really don't. But we're going to have to collectively co-create in the physical a game within the game, like for a lack of a better way of saying it. And
that word to backfill is such a great visual, because how do we create what we want? We have to imagine it. We have to be the energy of it, the feeling of it. So when you are throwing your anchor up here into the sky, you are feeling that place, which really does exist. It is there now in a different now, but it is there. And what we do is we backfill, or we put a rubber band between here and there. Yes, it's a great word, backfill.
It's ever since I've heard her say it, I'm like, that's amazing. And like I said, I'm like, holy crap, I've been doing this, and I continue to, and again, a lot of this is only clear to me in how much my own story of what I launched to do starting 10 years ago on the surface you know, so I go on my YouTube channel, what's this chick about? You know, my fan, like, what's really, you know, like it's known only to me at this point still, which brings up another, I think, really important thing to mention in terms of like being and learning how to be a self-validator. On this journey, there is, I don't know that there's, again, I list that in like one of the top 3 like messages, things that we work to, because if we understand that we don't want it, the outside world is just mirroring us on the inside, we don't want to seek the validation outside is backwards. It's all right here, right inside us. But we have been living and conditioned in an entire world of external validation, whether we know it or not. So learning how to be that person. So I'm the only one, seriously, in my life. There are a couple that literally, like maybe 2 others that are kind of able to see how far I've come and what has happened in the past decade. But for the most part, it's only me that knows, and it's only me that really needs to know. And you know, and that's, I think, and that's also a very challenging skill to acquire, and that needs constant, diligent attention. Because we're still living in this old we're dancing, I call it dancing in dimensions. We're in all of these realities. I'm not yet playing up here in a reality on it to the extent that I want to be and that I'm dreaming of, you know, like I'm definitely still within sort of this. So I have to continue to imagine what my world through my character looks like here. And that's the only thing I need to be concerned about. And then if others are doing the same thing, now we're talking. And that's what I think is coming. I want to believe it's around the corner. I want to believe it really is. I think you and I think we've taken a step into that. I kind of feel like it happened a couple of months ago. We talked about it, or a month ago, like 6 weeks ago. Our conversations just, remember when it happened? Like it was kind of noticeable. It's like, man, we're really playing up here, at least when you
vibing high. Yeah. Vibing high. Yeah. And one of the things, as you were talking, I thought one of the greatest challenges of having a YouTube channel, and you've been through this for 10 years, but if ever there is a test for self-validation, it's a YouTube channel.
Yes, that is so true. It's so true.
I can pour my heart and soul into a video and I go, oh my God, that's fantastic. I'm like, oh my God, it'll help 1 million people. And like you get 50 views. And we just like, and it's fantastic in that respect to have that constant, you know, who am I? What am I doing this for? Do I need the external validation? So it's been a very interesting experience having the YouTube channel.
Yeah. No, it's real. And like I said, I think I kind of felt myself in the class in which we both met, got sucked. You know, I've had a YouTube channel at the time. I only had 100 subscribers. And I swear to you, it never affected me. Like I never, because I don't want people just for the sake of subscribing. I only want people who are genuinely resonating, and I don't want people worshiping me or like, I want people that are coming together. And really the truth of it is I want to do it in person. Like I'm an in-person person. I don't like technology per se. I don't like the social media. I don't really, but I also knew 10 years ago when I started that YouTube channel, I remember thinking, Jo, I'm like, man, they got us a little bit by we got to get this in motion and start meeting one another in person because they're going to control this. And lo and behold, all these years later, they start controlling, maybe not yet the connections that we have with one another, but they do by the censorship of the information, because we both know people that lost channels that were speaking, you know, and that just wasn't my stick. I can't speak to the narratives and all the BS. I can tell you it's BS because it resonates as BS, but I don't have all that that hasn't been my role for the past 10 years. But I knew
Yeah.
10 years ago, I knew how few people in my world, I mean, I kind of knew how out there I was. When I finally had my awakening, I'm like full-fledged, I'm going for it. This is the world. I know it's true. I'm going for it. And that has meant pretty much a removal of almost everybody from my old network, if you will. But I knew then, I'm like, God, YouTube, it's international, it's worldwide. So let me throw it out there and it will find who it's meant to find. It's not about the numbers. And the irony was that it was somebody claiming to be this fifth dimensional dude that was making us feel like garbage because we only had 100 subscribers.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's not go there.
Like,
Let's not go there.
yeah, but I never even questioned, I never even questioned the number of views I got. I paid attention. I did pay attention to the specific people. Like when I would share something on, say, Facebook or something, I'm all about the energy, and I like the specific energy of somebody that would, because a lot of times I'll post something, if I get 15 or 20 likes, that is a lot. But what I would do is I play these games, because invariably, Jo, they would be from 15 different parts of my life. It would be like somebody from Microsoft, somebody from when I played college basketball, somebody from when I was a teacher, one family member, somebody from Seattle. Like, it would be a representative of all these distinct parts of my life. Yeah. And one person would, and that to me, the stories I would create in my head, because it was all frequency. I'm like, these people are all resonating with this frequency that's coming through me. What if we could take this frequency into all of those respective segments and start playing with this and creating? That's the way out. That's the way out.
And they're different segments of you.
Yes.
Because you were in that aspect of learning there, you were in that aspect of learning there. Yeah. Everything shows us.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it has been so enjoyable to play. I don't know that I've played as much in the past 6 weeks with another person at the highest frequency that I feel like we tap into. And it's just a shame that you're across the globe.
Well, that's one of the good things about what's been happening, what started 2.5 years ago, is that somehow we all just en masse decided to reach out to people across the world, because we were sort of trapped and couldn't. And so I've met some fantastic people over this last time. And, I really want to sort of thank the people that take the time to listen to my stuff on YouTube or on Facebook, because it despite saying we don't care, it is incredibly heartwarming.
Absolutely.
Heartwarming when somebody decides to take the time to leave a comment, even if it's just discussing further, even if it's supportive, even if it is sympathetic, whatever, if anybody wants to. And what we are doing, I know, is we are linking energy. As you say, we are exploring oneness. We are exploring connection with everybody that connects with us, whether that's on YouTube or on Facebook.
Oh yeah, I've got a friend of mine who shares a great little phrase that he says, I'd rather have the understanding of one than the adoration of a million. And that is how I feel like, again, like what you say, when one person, and you can tell, like just like a teacher, I could tell when one of my students got something, my little 6th graders, you can tell when they're just like, yes, Miss Noune, when they don't, you can tell when they get something. And when somebody watches something and really connects, and receives it in the way that you're delivering it, Oh my God, one person doing that feels like a million. And that's, it really does. And I like to also say it's about being connected, but detached. And it's really funny because those are, in certain circumstances, they seem like synonyms. But in the spiritual realm, if you will, they couldn't be more different. Yeah. Connected, but detached. So it's like I have to be detached, that I don't care how many watch or don't watch and comment or don't comment, but that doesn't mean I'm not connecting to the people that do take the time, because it's energy too. I don't take for granted anybody that's giving me however long a video is. They're giving me their energy. And I just hope that I can, I consciously, I often try to like when I deliver something, I have this visual in my head that somebody's energy, or their attention is energy being fed to me, that whatever it is, I like, it's like I'm trying to send it right back out. Does that make sense? Because
absolutely. There's love. My intent is always to send out love, to send out energy, to support. And of course, the light language does that as well. From something beyond my ego. It's definitely from here. So it's an honor to do that. And it's in a funny way, my job, my purpose. And so for anybody that wishes to receive it, there is, I feel such love and gratitude and thanks.
Yeah. So we've been going almost an hour.
So I think that's good.
I think this was a good.
Feels like it's the right place to finish up today. So
I think so.
Beautiful, bright souls that are watching this, we love you, truthfully, and it feels from my heart, and I hope that you feel that. And I thank anybody that listens to this, and hope that you gain some different perspectives and some insight, and just listening in on one of our weekly conversations. So love you guys.